We thought men's tennis was going to be a little bit more competitive after Nadal's injury and Roger Federer's retirement, but it doesn't seem to be. Before we go on about this week's tournament in Winston-Salem in North Carolina, we've got to talk about the match tonight. It's the final in Cincinnati, and looking ahead to that, here on Betting Weekly, Game Bet Match is the senior ATP Tour handicapper for the channel. It's Sean Calvert. Different intro, Sean. One take Seeley. Unbelievable.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. One take. That's what they call you, isn't it?
But before we go on to this week, obviously, we've spoken about Cincinnati. We haven't spoken to you since Wednesday. So obviously we've come through. It was a competitive draw. The best players are in the world. And we've got to the final this evening. 4:30 Eastern time, I believe the final is over in America. And it's Novak Djokovic against Carlos Alcaraz. I don't know if you've been keeping abreast of it in the knockout stages, but both of them, Alcaraz was extremely lucky to reach this final after Hurkacz had a set point against her, a match point against Hurkacz, sorry. And Novak Djokovic produced a great match against Alexander Zverev last night. Zverev was playing exceptionally well, but these two have been not at their best, I would say, for Alcaraz, definitely, but they've come through to the final here. Give you some lines on the final before we go into this week. Novak Djokovic minus 162, Carlos Alcaraz plus 132. The spread is 2.5 and the total is 22.5. A week before a major, Alcaraz is guaranteed to be number one seed now, going into the Flushing Meadow next week. Have you got any thoughts on this match before? I know it's going to be a very heavily bet match. Obviously, the last time they met was at Wimbledon final where Alcaraz won against Djokovic, but on the evidence of this week, I think Djokovic is playing in second gear.
Yeah, he'll be delighted with the way that he's played so far this week, Novak Djokovic. Conditions have been slightly different than we expected, but as far as Alcaraz is concerned, every match has been a struggle, hasn't it? I can't think of a match that he's played this tournament the way he's been great or even very good. It's all been scratchy. Dropping sets to Purcell. Hurkacz just kind of bottled it, really, didn't he? Had a forehand to win the match, and there was no conviction there, was there really? He just sort of looped it and hoped it was going to go in. And, once he'd lost that, he had chances again after that, didn't he, Hurkacz? I think he was 4-1 up in a tiebreak after that, Hurkacz. But we've seen this before from Hurkacz. He doesn't really have the guts when he needs them, unfortunately. Alcaraz does. But I think he's just battling himself. I think this week Alcaraz just not playing particularly well. Certainly not the standard that we've come to expect from him. Novak Djokovic, he'll be delighted with how he's played. Better than I expected, probably better than he expected, really, because he's not played since Wimbledon. But the underdogs won this both times so far, haven't they? Well, the last two times. I'm not sure about the third one. I haven't got the stats in front of me. But Djokovic obviously winning at the French and Alcaraz at Wimbledon, probably the reverse of what you would perhaps expect. On form, you can see why Djokovic is favourite, but he's a bit short for me. I mean, we know that Alcaraz is capable of a lot better than what he's shown so far in Cincinnati. So, I mean, I haven't really looked at this one from a betting perspective. I've been looking at Winston-Salem, but, if I was forced to make a pick and look at what the value is, I would certainly suggest that Alcaraz has got it in him to raise his game and win at the odds against, make it 3 out of 3 for the underdogs. I couldn't back Djokovic at that price in this matchup. Not for me, no.
No, minus 162 for Novak Djokovic here. I mean, the one thing you have to say really is, for bettors, really, how much should we look at this match and think about the US Open? Is it something that you would look at if Djokovic won this match 6-4, 6-4 for argument's sake? Would you think, well, he's got to go in as favourite to win the US Open, or do you think it's something that we just ignore? Should we look at it heavily or not really bother about it at all?
I don't think it makes that much difference. It's on the day, isn't it? Alcaraz won the US Open last year, didn't he? Having played not particularly well at all in Canada and in Cincinnati. I don't know whether you picked that up. I couldn't hear what you were saying there because there was a jet plane going over the top of a.
I did hear it. I thought it was my house. I honestly thought.
I think it's here.
The Hoover was going, and I was going to fall on the floor because I thought there's no way that Paul will be doing the hoovering.
Yeah, nor Natasha.
No way.
By the way, I do all the hoovering, so it definitely wasn't going to be that. Yeah, but I think it was here because they were doing it yesterday as well. There's a RAF fighter planes going over or something, so I couldn't really hear what you were saying. But yeah, looking at it, it's just a one-off, as I said. Alcaraz, as I said, didn't play great this stage of the season last year. Went on and won the US Open. I don't think either man would be that bothered if they lost this match. Obviously, they want to win it. Of course they do, but I don't think either. I think both of them will see this as a positive week. Alcaraz, after his not so great performance in Canada, and Djokovic having not played since Wimbledon. I think both of them will see this as a positive, unless one of them gets injured or, slight injury or something like that. I think they'll both see it as a good week.
And it's quite interesting when you look at the prices now for the US Open, which starts next Monday in New York. Carlos Alcaraz is plus 140 to win the tournament, defend his title. He's going to be number one seed. Novak Djokovic is plus 160. But yet for this match, Novak Djokovic is minus 162 and Carlos Alcaraz is plus 132. So you can see where probably the value lies with Carlos Alcaraz. But on the evidence of what we've seen this week, Carlos Alcaraz isn't playing at his best. I don't think he played his best coming into this tournament either, but he is capable of a lot better. So probably a watching brief for us, but we had to talk about that match because it is the biggest tennis match of the week without question.
Probably similar to the French, actually. We just had another point there, because Djokovic didn't come into that match with much form, did he, in the French? And then the level he showed against Alcaraz was way better, wasn't it, than he'd shown previously in the tournament. So I wouldn't necessarily be worrying too much about the 2 or 3 matches that have gone on before. I mean, I would suggest Alcaraz if I was betting in that one.
Yeah, plus 132 there. I would just watch it. I'd just watch it, and I'd be hoping that I think whoever wins the first set will win in straight sets. I don't think either of them will want to just play a long marathon match a week before a major. Maybe that's my sort of feeling of these kind of matches. I always think to myself, well, why do they want to go and slug it out for 3 matches? I know it's 1,000 event.
Yeah. I mean, Djokovic, yeah, he's his age. Alcaraz, he's got, he's basically got a week off. What's he going to do with all that energy?
Well, what would you do with all the energy at 21? I don't know what I'll be doing. Anyway, let's move on to GB. It's the Winston-Salem tournament. It's a 250 event. It's the week before the US Open, as we say. The action starts on Monday, and here on Betting Weekly Game Bet Match, we're going to have you covered. Rory Giovanni returns for the women's tour. So we've got the ATP Tour events as well. We can look at the preview of both tournaments. So a real action-packed couple of weeks. Myself and Sean will be in New York. If you're over in New York and you want to meet us for a beer, or just have a little hangout of us and watch some bets, and we just give us a shout and we'll come and meet you and have a little chat and maybe meet up in a bar and watch some tennis together. So looking forward to that in the next week. But we've got the business end here. We've got Winston-Salem. We've got a 250 event here. Before we look at some of the matches, it's a hard court, lake hold court, as we mentioned. We've spoken about these kind of conditions before, Sean, on the North American tour. What do you think here? I mean, statistically, this tournament has had some shock winners. Manarino, Evashka, some big fights. It's another tournament that you really want to be betting favourites, given the fact that we have the US Open next week. Before we give the trends on the market, give us what the conditions are going to be. I can imagine it being quite warm and quite humid and quite hot. Yeah,
I mean, it's still a lake hold surface, which hasn't been the case in all of the US Open series. They do keep chopping and changing the courts. It's not ideal. I thought it was a strange decision for Cincy to go with a green set. Slightly weird, but still, this is exactly the same conditions as the US Open in theory. It's a lake hold hard court. Wilson US Open balls, same as the US Open. A little bit of altitude here at 291 meters, so the balls will probably fly a little bit. Just slightly higher altitude than Mason, Ohio. Warm, as you said, between 32 and 36 all week, maybe the odd thunderstorm. It's not the quickest. I mean, in terms of the stats, it's not that quick. 78% holds, 72.5% first serve points won. That's the average over the last, I think it's 6 or 7 editions. That makes it, for me, a sort of medium-paced outdoor hardcourt. 37% of the matches feature a tie break, kind of, again, quite average. Quite a lot of underdogs winners you would probably expect the week before a major, but overall 37% of them win. But actually the highest frequency of underdogs comes in the later rounds, quarterfinals, semifinals, and the final. And to me, that's just purely because the players that have got to that stage that think to themselves, well, I've had a decent week here. I'm pretty primed for the US Open now. I'm not too fussed about this, and they tend to kind of let it drift away. And so if you are looking at underdogs, which obviously I always am, I always look at the last few rounds here at Winston-Salem as well as the first round for underdogs. As far as the trends are concerned, as you said, plenty of huge price winners. Manarino 66-1 last year beat Jere, who was 150-1. Ivashka, as you said, 35-1, beat Mikael Ymer 66-1. Medvedev was 33-1 when he won it here a few years ago. Damir Zuma was a runner-up here at 100-1. Normally just plays, well, generally on clay or slower courts anyway. Carreno Busta was 50-1 when he won here, and Pierre Aguez Herbert was a 200-1 runner-up here a few years ago. And number one seeds, they don't have a good record here at all, as you would probably expect the week before a major. Only 2 number one seeds have ever made the final at Winston-Salem. So it's opportunity does knock for quite a few players this week.
Yeah, the tournament, the top 16 seeds do get a bye through, but the action starts today. So it starts at 3:00 Eastern time. So if you want to have some...
Yeah, Sunday to Saturday, isn't it? Pre-major.
We're gonna talk about some matches that start today. So make sure you head to the Bet Rivers website and talk about today. Before we look at the man matches, though, the 16 seeds all have a bye through to the first round. And that first round will probably get underway on Tuesday. Tuesday. So it'll be first round will be Sunday and Monday. So today and Monday. And we look at the betting. Borna Coric is the number one seed here. Who's the defending champion in Cincinnati. Bowed out early there. Calvert is the number 2 seed. Number 3 seed, we have a wild card in Sebastian Korda. Lehecka's number 5. Laszlo Jerry, a former finalist here, is the number 4 seed. So just by those 5 or 6 players, we go 5 or 6. I mean, Arthur Fields is 7. We have number 5, Sebastian Bay's number 6, and number 5, Lehecka. So judging by those sort of players there, you can see this is going to be a very, very competitive tournament. If you look at the draw, I don't think there's really much favourable in the top half of the bracket or the bottom half of the bracket. And on the betting, this is wide open. Sebastian Korda is 8-1. Borna Coric is 10-1. Talon Greek Sport 12. Arthur Fields 16. Nakashima 16. Scott Draper, the Brit who's making a bit of a reappearance.
He's not back in the game, is he? Scott Draper.
Sorry. What did I say? Jack Draper. Scott Draper's the Australian. I forgot.
Won Queen's Club.
I'm getting my Drapers mixed up. Jack Draper's 18-1. Lehecka 18-1. Rusevori is 20-1. Safalin is 20-1. And Dominic Thiem is 25. So that's the top 10 in the betting here. Looking at the bracket, Sean, I don't think there's much advantage either way. I don't know if you've broken it down a little bit more in depth for me, but I wouldn't turn around and say there's a huge advantage being the top half or the bottom half here.
I think the top half looks weaker to me.
Right.
The reason for that is that the high seeds, well, certainly 2 of them, but Coric, I wouldn't be trusting at all the week before a major. He'll probably go and win it now. I've said that, but because he does have this problem, I don't know whether people are aware, some people will be, that he does have this ongoing shoulder problem. So after every match, he has to do a lot of rehab. He has a lot of ice on it. You know, it's a problem he's had for a long time. It wouldn't make sense to me for someone like that who does have that issue to go deep and win a tournament so close to the Open. You know, he'll have to play the final on Saturday, then he'll perhaps play a first round in New York on Monday with a shoulder that needs constant work. And he's not been in great form anyway, so he's certainly be a fade for me. And Baez, obviously, a clay quarter, just won a tournament recently on the clay. I can't imagine he'll be here for more than a couple of rounds of match practice. Looking at the other seeds, Vukic is a danger, but he's played an awful lot of tennis lately. How much tennis is he going to want to play this week before a major? Having played a heck of a lot in recent weeks. Offner for me, more of a clay guy. Jerry made the final last year, 150-1. So he may well be sort of reasonably motivated to go well, but he's not generally at his best on hard courts. Van der Zandschulp's coming back from injury, hasn't really had a decent patch of tennis for a long time. And Hanfmann is another guy who struggles on hard courts. He's more of a clay guy. So I think there's an opportunity for a couple of, well, I could actually make a case for probably about 15 players in this draw. But in the top half, the ones I quite like, just looking at the draw here, Marcos Giron and Roman Safilan. I could also make a case for Quentin Halys or Alex Mitchelson. Those are the ones on my shortlist. I've gone for Giron 28-1 and Safilan at 20-1. Giron played great in Canada, beat Holger Rune and Emil Ruusuvuori. And interestingly, all 4 of his finals at challenger level and main level have come in the USA. He's won 8 of 11 matches at Winston-Salem. Some of those were in qualifying, but it shows that he's at least motivated to go well here, which I think he will be. I think you should see this as a chance. If I was Giron, if I was a lot of these players in this draw, I'd be thinking, this is my chance of getting a main level title. And as far as Safilan's concerned, you know, the level he showed in Wimbledon for me is good enough to win this sort of 250. Is he motivated? Well, he should be. He came back, should have beaten Jarry, as we know, last week. Failed to do so from a set and a breakup, but that level is more than good enough for me. So I've taken him at 20-1 as well. I've just gone win only this week because it can get expensive if you start backing each way. You're taking sort of 3 or 4 of them, and none of them make the final. It's because it is so wide open. I've just gone for the outright, and if they make the final, then I'll consider doing a hedge on on the day. But from the top half of the draw, those are my two, Giron and Saffiolin.
So we've got Giron. What price we got Giron?
28 to 1.
And Saffiolin is
20 to 1.
And they are the two. You're not going to look at the bottom.
I was just pausing in case you wanted to.
Oh, sorry.
About the bottom half.
No, we could look at the bottom half now, and obviously in that bottom half, you've got Artur Fils, Richard Gasquet, Vukcevic, Korda. I mean, Korda 8 to 1 to win the tournament. If going back 6 months ago, he would be 2 to 1, 3 to 1 to his tournament. Yeheka, Altmaier, Ruusuvuori, Grigspor. That doesn't really inspire me much confidence. Those seeds at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, from a Korda point of view, the fact that he's had to take a late wild card here tells you all you need to know. He was never intended to play this tournament. He didn't enter it for the reasons that I presume, and rightly so. If you're Korda, you probably thought that you were going to go well in the tournaments preceding this and didn't need to play this week, but hasn't worked out that way. Desperately needs matches, really needs confidence. You can see why he's taken the wild card, Korda, but it's a tough one. This bottom half, I think, is really tough. That fourth quarter, particularly, you got Lehecka in there, Kopfer, Ruusuvuori, Purcell, who played beyond anyone's expectations, I think, last week in Cincinnati, Jack Draper, and Grigspor all in that fourth quarter. I've actually gone for Kopfer here at 40 to 1. It's a real kind of not a shot in the dark exactly, but it's on the basis of what I think he's capable of and how close he is to getting back to that level. Because we saw it in Los Cabos, got to the semi-finals, lost out in a final set in the semis to De Minaur, who obviously went on to make the final that week and the final the week after. So he was in great form, and it took 3 sets for De Minaur to beat him. Kopper coming back from injury. His best level is more than good enough to get to the final here. But it's a very, very difficult draw. As I said, in the bottom half, I could make a case for probably 10 of these. But I've gone with Kopfer because I like the price. I think 40 to 1 is good value.
So we've got 3 win-only picks here in Winston-Salem, not each way picks. So we've got Giron at 20 to 1, was it?
Giron 28.
28 to 1. We have Saffiolin at
20.
21. I knew one was 21. And the bottom one, we have Kopfer at 40 to 1. So there are our 3 outright picks this week in Winston-Salem. Only win only, no each way. Bet Rivers do offer the each way if you want to have a little bit of security. But in this kind of draw, when it's 8 to 1 the field, anything can happen. And we want to, we are going to, if we want to do a little bit of hedging, or we want to do anything on our positions, if we get them later on the tournament, we can do those kind of big prices. So just win only for this week, and that is the outright preview on Winston-Salem. Now move on to the matches, and as I say, some of these matches start at 3:00 Eastern time today, and the first match we're going to talk about is one of those matches. It's Alexander Shevchenko up against Marc-Andre Hussler. Shevchenko is a heavy favourite here, -165. Hussler is +132. The spread is 2.5. -106, Shevchenko give it up 2.5. Who's that getting 2.5 is -121. And the total here is 22.5. If you look at the head-to-head record, they won in a Phoenix Challenger, one match, and it was won by Shevchenko 7-5, 6-1. Or this year, the money has come for Hussler, which is quite surprising, though. If you look at his current form, he's only won once of his last 7 matches, and that was in qualifying in Cincinnati. Whereas Shevchenko come through qualifying and was beat by Sonego here. Is it a strategy on a tournament before a major to get with the underdogs? You know, you're a man who likes to bet the dog. Do you tend to see the Calvert bank balance go up a little bit more before for a major tournament, where you might get more of the more seeded players just want to go there and just go through the motions and just go into the majors a little bit in better shape?
It can go either way. The week before a major, it tends to go either really well or really not so well. Doesn't seem to be any in between. I've taken Hussler here because I feel like he's going to be the more motivated. He desperately needs matches. Made the semi-finals here as a qualifier last year, actually, Hussler. So conditions obviously suit him. Needs to back up those points to avoid another rankings drop. As you say, he's not had a great season so far, but in conditions that he knows well and he obviously enjoys, won a lot of matches last year through qualifying to the semi, so knows how to play here. the match that you talked about at the Phoenix Challenger, that was played in very, very slow conditions, slow balls, much more in favor of Shevchenko, the guy that plays mainly on clay. No real surprise that he beat Husler in those sort of conditions in Phoenix, but Husler can play his game better here than he can there. He was a 1.73. That's roughly minus 137 chance to win that match in Phoenix, Husler. I took him earlier on today to win this match at 2.8 plus 180. So huge difference in the prices in sort of 6 months, less than 6 months. And let's have a look at the stats. If we take clay out of the equation, Shevchenko is more of a clay man. Husler absolutely isn't. So we take clay out of the equation, just matches played on surfaces other than clay this season. Shevchenko's 2-4 win-loss. It's a 33% win rate, and his service points won, return points won total is 93. I know it's a small sample size, only played 6 matches, but even so, it's not great stats. Husler in a season that he's performed below par in, he's still got a better win rate, 35%, and his service points won, return points won total is quite a lot better at 98. So there's that. There's the fact that Husler will be motivated at a tournament he's gone well at before. Shevchenko not that experienced at playing at left-handers on hard courts. That Phoenix match against Husler is the only time he's actually played a top 100 left-handed player on a hard court. So I'm happy to take Husler here, or I was happy to take him at 2.8 earlier on today. I don't know what he is now.
He's plus 145. The Calvert has got the value again. Plus 145. Is he a bet?
Getting the value is one thing. Getting him over the line sometimes is another. But if you keep taking the value, I think that's the strategy. Well, it's for me long term.
But is he value at plus 145 though? Do you think that
it's not quite as appealing, but I still think that's reasonable. Yeah. Okay. I'm assuming that he's going to be very, very keen to win this match. Usually doesn't mean he's going to win it, but what you want really, if you can find an angle with guys this week who you think are going to perform well or not so well for any reason, then that's a bit of an edge to you if you can do that.
Well, as we've been on the air, Husler's now plus 132.
Okay, that's quite a big move, isn't it?
That's so plus 180. Now,
my £2.50 has wrecked the market. I think there at.
Would you play the plus 132? I mean, if you've got him at plus 180, now people are getting this line at plus 132. Is it something to say he's a lean for you, or you would turn around and say I probably wouldn't play it?
Yeah, that's a bit short now. That might go out again just before the match starts.
So if he drifts back out to plus 145, we'd take it. Or plus 132 is no play.
Yeah,
it's price dependent. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're not going to play. That's not an official play. Check the market out there. Husler goes back out to plus 145. He's a play at the current price of Bet Rivers at plus 132. We're not playing. So on the early market, that was a bit of the value when we've done the research for this match, but the market has moved very quickly. The line has moved. So Husler now, we need him to go to plus 140. So we won't put it down as an official play as the day goes on. But if you do get plus 145, then we're not putting you off having a bet on that, but we won't record that bet as a play. The next match we're going to talk about is an interesting one. It's between the American big server Brandon Nakashima against the Aussie Jason Kubler. It's 8:30 p.m. This evening, one of the late games. Nakashima is minus 245, a heavy favourite. Jason Kubler is plus 190. The spread here is 3.5. It's plus 107 for Nakashima, minus 3.5. Kubler receiving the start is minus 137, and the total here is 22.5. The two have never met before on the hard court this season. Nakashima hasn't had one of his best years. He's only 6-9 on the year, and he's lost his last 3 matches against Andy Murray in the second round at Washington, Lehecka in the opening round in Toronto, and Stan Wawrinka in Cincinnati. Whereas Kubler got beaten qualifying by Lajovic, who didn't have a bad tournament. So when you see this one going, I mean, Brandon Nakashima, given the fact that he's lost 3 matches, given the fact that he's got his home slam next week, I wouldn't be betting him at minus 245.
No, I mean, he will want matches, Nakashima, because he's, as you say, he's had a tough season with injuries and lack of form. But the stats here are all favouring overs. I touched on it last week in the show, how Nakashima just cannot take a break point. And, it's been a huge problem for him breaking serve. 10 of his last 11 best of 3 set matches have gone over 22.5 games. And the one that didn't went to 22 games. His last 8 matches in a row featured a tiebreak. And this is why he's taken just 7 of his 52 breakpoint chances this hard court swing so far. So he's creating the chances okay. He's just completely unable to take any of them. Needs to go deep here, I think, Nakashima, because he won San Diego last year, which was played the week after the US Open. So San Diego isn't played this year. It's not on the tour this year. So he's going to have to go deep, maybe either here or potentially in one of the two early tournaments in China to avoid, falling further down the rankings. Kubler's only played a couple of matches since Wimbledon, so he'll want matches as well, you would have thought. Now, let's have a look at the stats. 2023 on outdoor hard, the service points won, return points won, tails. There's very little in it. Kubler 99, Nakashima 100. So on the basis of that, their level is very, very similar. And here's the other stat. Both of them have held serve 86% of the time, but they've only broken 9% and 12.6% respectively. The 9%, as you can probably guess, is Nakashima, who just cannot break serve. And Kubler's not very good either at 12.6%. So on all these stats, it's suggesting overs to me. Now, I had a quick look at what happened last year at Winston-Salem in case there was a lot of very quick two-set matches, and that wasn't really the case. 53% of the round one matches here last year went over 22.5 games. So there's no obvious trend for players kind of tanking in the first round. Later on, maybe I would suggest that's probably more likely to be the case. So I took over 22.5 games earlier on at 1.88. It was minus 114 with Bet Rivers.
There's the play. Let's have a look at the markets they have on Bet Rivers now. We have over 29 different markets available on the website. And if you have a bet on the website, you'll be able to live stream this match this evening at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Next match is a 5 p.m. start. One of the early matches again. It's Radu Albert up against Daniel Elia Galan. Galan had a very good Wimbledon. A lot of people might have seen him at Wimbledon. He's minus 129 to win this tournament against the journeyman on the ATP Tour. Albert is plus 104. The spread is 2.5. Plus 2.5 for Albert is minus 150. Galan giving up 2.5 is minus 116. The total is 22.5. The pair have never met before again, but Galan has had a pretty poor hard-court campaign, to say the least. He's played 6 matches, only won 1 of those 6 matches. What do you think here?
I think Albot is a little bit of value at the prices. I don't know what he is now, but I took him at 2.25, I think it was, a Bet Rivers earlier on. I don't know whether that line's moved or not, but
it's plus 104 now. You're moving markets, Sean. You're moving the markets. He's just above even money now.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the stats. And so I've taken the last 2 seasons because there wasn't that much data. So I've gone back 2 seasons to the start of 2022. So far this season and all of last season on outdoor hard at main level. Albot, 55% win rate and the service points won, return points won, total of 100. Elahi Galan, not as good, 47% win rate only and a 98 total. So just on that, I wasn't sure how Elahi Galan can be the price that he initially was when this market first materialized. The Colombian doesn't really have the raw power to hit Albert off the court like some people can. Jeff Wolf did it a week or so ago. If you're serving big, hitting big in quick conditions, you can knock Albert out if you're playing well, if you play that game style and play it well. But Elahi Galan doesn't play like that. This could well come down to who wants it more. And that's an intangible for most players. There are reasons for players to go deep and to not go deep in these tournaments. I can't see any reason why either of these two shouldn't particularly want to. But for me, I took Albot to 2.25 just on the basis of he's got the better hardcourt stats, and that's just too short for me on Elahi Galan. That's simple as that, really.
You're not worried about his form on the hard courts, you see?
Who? Albot?
Yeah, I mean, given the fact that the Galan, I mean, Galan's form is not that great either.
Well, I'm taking Albot, so I mean,
yeah. So, but you thinking that Galan is like Wimbledon form? Sorry, I meant Wimbledon form rather than
Wimbledon. I don't think Galan has a sort of big enough game to knock Albot off the court. I think he's going to have to win it the hard way. Which, if you're playing Albot, generally, unless you've got the power to beat him, with that power, you're going to have to beat him on accuracy, on movement, on commitment, all these things. And as I said, the stats for Albert on hard courts are better. than Elahi Galant. So I was happy to take him as slight underdog, Albert. So I only had a small bet on this one, but yeah, that price for me was too big. And now that it's moved in, I think that obviously some people agree with me, or the odds makers have decided that it was too big. Yeah, I was happy to take that price.
But would you take the plus 104 now?
Probably a bit short 104 now. That's quite a movement, isn't it?
So again, another one that we just sort of lean or
yeah. I mean, obviously, when I write these, it's a few hours before we record, isn't it? So I don't know what the market's going to do in that time. I suppose you would have to, if it's moved that far, I suppose you would have to put it down as just a lean, and kind of if it comes back out again to sort of 2.2, then take it. But perhaps a little bit short now.
Okay. I'm sorry, I've lost a bit of concentration here because my computer's completely frozen on me. So I've got no mouse. I can't get any prices. So I've had to go. I was concentrating on my phone, so I got a bit led astray there. I felt like I was a bit vague and I was a bit rude. It wasn't that. It was that my whole computer system was thrown up. So I needed to get onto my phone to get the Bet Rivers app up on my phone to be able to use everything. So I was concentrating on getting that, so I could not look silly for the next bit. And I lost a bit of concentration there. So I apologise. I'm back in the room now. So I apologise for that. Let's go on to we've only got 2 more matches to talk about. We've got 5 matches in this round. The next match we're going to speak about is Benjamin Bonzi against Alexandre Muller. Benjamin Bonzi's the outsider, plus 115, which does surprise me slightly there. Alexander Muller is minus 141. The spread is minus 1.5 for Muller at minus 114. Bonzi plus 1.5 is minus 112. The total is 22.5. The two of these have never played before in the match before, but Bonzi's obviously a player that's probably a lot bit more experienced, but Muller has got the better record on the hard courts this year. He's 15-7, probably on lower levels, and Bonzi is 7-5. The money has come from Bonzi, which doesn't surprise me. Plus 115 is the price here now. What do you think of that?
Plus 115. Wow, that is quite big, because he was 2.43. Plus 143 earlier on when I was looking at this match.
Do you think? I think the thing here, Sean, is that it is a tournament that a lot of the books will have lower acceptance levels on, and they will move the market much more quicker. This is a tournament that is before a major. So obviously, if you wanted to have $1,000 on someone or $500 on someone, the levels of what you can get on this tournament will be very low, and price movements will be moved very, very quickly on the back of the fact that the books won't know what motivation these players have. So that's why we're seeing these big movements on these prices in the last hour, and some of these are actually as we're speaking here, because it's not going to take a lot of money to move these lines in an ATP Tour 250 event before a major. So that's why we're going to see these big classes. But Bonzi's plus 115, Alexander Muller is minus 141. I mean, a lot of people complain about not being able to get down on bets and stuff like that. But you got to be respectful in a tournament before a major when no one's going. And to tell you one thing we never mentioned about, which we're going to come on to at the end of the show, but we'll come on to that. I am not even going to mention it now, but I'll give you some time to think about it. The amount of injuries last week. The amount of injuries last week in Cincinnati was insane, but we'll come on to that in a little bit, because I think that's going to play a big part in the US Open. So Muller minus 141, Bonzi plus 115. Big move for Bonzi here. What do you think about this?
That is a big move, isn't it? I mean, the question I've got written down here is, when is Bonzi going to find his old form after that wrist injury that he had about 4 months or so ago? He's won only 1 of 8 matches since he retired in Monte Carlo, and that was a few days ago, last week at the Winnipeg Challenger. But even after he won that match, he lost to the world number 570, Darian King, in straight sets in his next match. So the form that Bonzi's been showing now, or recently, in the last sort of 3 or 4 months since that wrist injury, has been absolutely nowhere near what he's capable of. So as I said, the question is, when is he going to find his true form? This could be a similar situation to the Dominic Thiem situation, where he obviously had a bad wrist injury, kept him off the court for much longer. But still, we haven't seen the best of Dominic Thiem, the team that was the team before the wrist injury. This could be the same thing with Bonzi. I don't know. It might have been a less serious injury, but he was a top 50 player 6 months ago, Benjamin Bonzi. But my lean here before the prices moved was Bonzi, just to potentially take a chance on him, because I don't think he can continue to be this poor. And Muller isn't in good form anyway. He's lost his last 5 matches, Muller, and he's only won 2 of his 8 main level matches since he lost the Marrakesh final, where I was, to Carballes Baena. So he's not been in great form since then. Main level stats on outdoor hard all time. Muller hasn't played that many. He's only played 6, won 3, lost 3, service points, 1 return points, 1 total of 99. Bonzi, as you would expect, better stats. Same win rate, 50% and 101 total. So Bonzi with the better hardcore data, but we're not seeing that Bonzi at the minute. My lean was going to be Bonzi at 2.43, but that price has now disappeared. And that's got nothing to do with me because I didn't take it. Although I was sorely tempted at 2.43, but I think it's just going to be, again, another lean now. I couldn't bet him at that price.
Yeah, Bonzi now plus 115. The final match, that one is, the Bonzi game is 3 o'clock this afternoon. Obviously, get to the Bet Rivers website. Lots of different markets on that match. Jack Draper against Nuno Borges is the match tomorrow. So we've given 4 matches all today. Remember, the ATP Tour event starts today. So head to the Bet Rivers website, 3 o'clock Eastern time, the first match. Jack Draper with Nuno Borges. You've got an extra day to place your wager on this one. And this is quite an intriguing one because obviously Jack Draper hadn't played since the French Open. Then he's gone to the Winnipeg Challenger. Got through to qualifying, but lost in the round of 16. The tournament which was won by Ryan Petterston, our good friend. We followed at Queen's Club and at Wimbledon, and at Surbiton, he won the tournament there. But Jack Draper didn't do as well as the fellow Brit there. He was bowed out in the last 16. Minus 250, though. He's a very, very heavy favourite against Nuno Borges, who hasn't had a bad year by his high standards, but comes in shocking form, lost his last 5. But he's another one who's seen money for. He's now down to plus $2 from much bigger than that earlier in the day. And Jack Draper is a bit of a negative, a bit of a fade from the betting public. He's minus 250. I think you've got to be very brave to bet Jack Draper given his injury concerns this year.
Very brave. He was 1-3 earlier on. He's eased a bit since then by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
This is just whether you can trust, whether you can trust both of them actually. Draper, whether you trust his fitness at minus 250 or minus $3 as he was before in his current physical condition. As he said, he hasn't played for 2.5 months until he came back last week at that Winnipeg Challenger, lost in the quarterfinals to Arthur Cazot, who then himself ended up losing in the semis to eventual champion Ryan Petterston. So that's not great form for Draper. You would expect it. Obviously, he's not played for 2.5 months. He seems to be a guy that is injured an awful lot. I was sat next to his physio's dad at the Rome Masters, so I was talking to him quite a bit about the condition that Draper seems to be in. I don't think he really had an answer for it either. It just seems to be that his body at the minute just isn't capable of sustaining kind of high level tennis week after week, month after month. I'm tempted to take Borges, but the fact is he hasn't won a match in the last 2 months, and he doesn't tend to go well against big servers and power players anyway. He is one player, Borges, on a quicker surface that you can bully if you've got pace and power, which obviously Draper has. Whether he's got that A game at the minute is highly questionable. My lean here was over 22.5 games. It was plus 108 with Bet Rivers earlier on. Not sure if that line's changed as well, but I feel like if Draper is going to win this, I can't imagine it's going to be easy given his lack of activity. And Borges, you would think, would be in need of matches and wins as well. As I say, he's not won a match in 2 months, so this one should be a lengthy one, I think.
The total game market is 21.5 with over a minus 124, under minus 103. You can go up to 22.5. You can use a little widget and move your line.
I think that's what I did. Yeah,
you can go up to that, and it hasn't changed from what your price there. It's minus 108 for over 22.5. The spread here is 3.5. Borges receiving 3.5, which may tempt some given the fact that the inactivity that Jack Draper has had is minus 107. Jack Draper giving up 3.5, which I would expect to be a very brave bet. Remember, that match starts tomorrow. The 4 matches we spoke about all today. So Sunday to Saturday tournament, US Open next week, and we will have you covered here on Betting Weekly Game Bet Match on the US Open as we do. Remember, there's 4 ways to follow us. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel. It's the Betting Weekly Studios. Fantastic content there. The guys are cashing tickets left, right, and centre on the European soccer. You can follow us on our Twitter account, @BecauseWeWin, which is also the same name for our Instagram account, @BecauseWeWin. There's been loads of content from myself and Sean in the Big Apple in the next week on there as well. And also, you can give us which one have I missed? I've missed the Game Better Match podcast. You can download the podcast on your preferred podcast provider Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. Sean, just before we go, we usually open up for some questions. So if anyone has any questions to ask us, anything you want on handicapping, any advice going forward, 2 questions that I have. One of them is from me about the Cincinnati tournament this week. There's so many injuries, not only on the men's, on the women's as well. Huge amount of injuries. We know going into the US Open, there is more injuries at the US Open than anybody else. But this doesn't look good, does it, for the tournament with so much tennis being played? Is that a worry for you in terms of your handicapping when you see so many players getting injured, and especially going into a 5-setters in terms at this stage of the season, in these conditions, in these hot, humid conditions? Is it part of your brain for this major that's coming up?
Yeah, it's always part of my thinking, injuries. I mean, if take like Draper, for example, he's a guy, if you're betting on Draper, you are thinking, the first thing you think about actually is he going to be fit enough for this? And this is the case for a number of players. It tends to be the same people over and over again that have problems, but obviously there's others as well. You're looking at someone like Holger Rune, for example, who hasn't helped himself at all by sort of not resting after Wimbledon, going to play Hopman Cup for whatever reason when he wasn't fit. Seems to have aggravated that back injury. Now you're looking at, if you've backed Holger Rune for the US Open maybe a few months ago, maybe at the start of the year or whatever, you're now thinking, well, yeah, thanks, Holger. You just decided to play through an injury, and now you're injured again before the US Open. People like Berrettini, for example, another one. You're always thinking, and Sinner, another Italian. These are just off the top of my head, but it tends to be if you want to use the phrase repeat offenders, if you like, the guys that regularly break down are the ones that I would worry about. The others, there's nothing you can do about some of them. A guy just gets injured out of the blue, then what can you do? But the guys that are regularly over and over again getting injured, that would certainly be in the back of my mind. Yeah. And
the final question, it's from Mike from New Jersey, and he sent this question through from Twitter, and he's asked me if you have a $300 bet, which he says he has. He's got a $300 bet.
And he wants me $300, is
he? He wants to know where you would put it now on the US Open on the men's side. Where would you put it?
Nothing like putting me on the spot, is there?
It's a question.
I haven't seen the market. Can I have a look at the market or not?
I would if my computer's right. I have to get my phone. I'm doing everything with my phone. Well, we have. Let's go to the Bet Rivers website now. Let me get the market for you. So these are the latest lines on the men's singles. Carlos Alcaraz plus 140, Novak Djokovic plus 160, Medvedev $6, Yannick Sinner $9, Holger Rune 30, Tsitsipas 33, Casper Ruud 33, Alexander Zverev 33, Andrei Rublev 50, Francis Tiafoe 50, Taylor Fritz 50, Hurkacz 50, Sebastian Korda 50, Kachanov 50. Then big prices the rest.
The first ones you read out there, apart from Alcaraz and Djokovic, the next 3 or 4 didn't inspire me at all. Obviously, Rune's injured. Sinner, well, we've just seen yet again. I said on the show last week, by the way, didn't I, that Lajovic was a lean for me in Cincinnati. Cincinnati beat Sinner in straight sets. If you saw that match, Sinner wasn't really able to do much, was he? Creaking and sort of groaning and not able to do it. That's after 1 week of a best of 3. So he's a fade for me, or certainly somebody that I wouldn't back. Holger Rune's injured, as we've said. The one that interests me probably at those prices would be Zverev. He's one that should have won the US Open before, had his chances to win it in the year that Team won it. He's beaten Alcaraz before. He was pretty close against Djokovic. Decent draw. If he gets a decent draw, I think 33-1. Just off the top of my head with what you just said there, I think Mike's $300 could be an each way shout on Zverev at that price.
That's what I thought. I thought 50 each way on Alexander Zverev. I think apart from the front 2, I think it's very hard to find value unless Medvedev gets a decent draw and you can.
He's not looking great either.
He's not looking. Yeah, I mean he's going to be seeded he's going to be number 3 seed, isn't he? So he's going to play Alcaraz or Djokovic before he gets to the final. So
I'd fancy his chances to get more against Djokovic than Alcaraz. It's not a good matchup for Medvedev Alcaraz for me.
But Zverev played very well last night, didn't he, against Djokovic as well?
Played well. We still haven't seen the best of him since that injury he had well over a year ago now. But on his best form, we've seen him before. He's one that can light it up. We've seen it at the Tour Finals. He can come in with not much form, and he's gone and won it, beat all the best players in the world. He's the one for me that with a fair wind is capable of doing something. Yeah.
So there you go, Mike. That's your $100 free bet. $50
Don't come
each way.
chasing me in New York if he loses in the first round. By the way,
He
Mike.
hasn't got far to go to find you. Only from New
God.
Jersey. He'll be there.
I'll just
he'll be there in an hour.
Okay, I look forward to
again,
that.
Sean, where are you staying again?
Not sure.
No, okay. Well, Mike, we'll let you know. I guarantee you we'll tweet where you're staying if Zverev's in the final. But there you go. That's it. That's the Winston-Salem tournament. Sorry about my shoddy performance. Literally, my whole computer has frozen up. What is my mouse has run out of battery, so I can't navigate anywhere. Now, it happened about 5 minutes into the show, and I haven't got a charger in this room.
Yeah, but the professional that you are, nobody noticed, to be honest, apart from you. So.
I got my phone out, and I started to use my phone, but I did lapse a bit of concentration when we were talking about the Gallen-Abbott game, and I gave
easily
you
done when you're talking about Radu Albot.
I gave you some random information. I tried to cover it up with my shoddiness by telling about Wimbledon rather than hardcore for because I wasn't concentrating on what you were saying. My apologies there. Anyway, thanks very much for listening and watching. Please download the podcast and obviously please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Great content, as I said there. And myself and Sean will be back on Tuesday, looking ahead to the matches here on the draw, and also we'll be back on. We're back on Wednesday as well, Tuesday and Wednesday. So Tuesday and Wednesday this week, and then next week I'll be flying out to New York on Tuesday. But I think the content will be landing by the weekend, so you'll be having all the tournament future bets. You'll be having the first round bets, and obviously we'll have a look at the women's as well. As Rory Girani will return from his holidays, nice and refreshed there. Sean, thank you very much for joining me. A little bit longer than usual, but. Very interesting tournament this week in Winston-Salem in North Carolina. Not a players we can make a case for. I think it's a very open market, and hopefully we can cash some tickets and go into the US Open with a few extra dollars in our pocket. Take care.